Hello, before we get into this episode, we wanted to give out a trigger warning that this is an episode about mental health, and there are things we touch on that fall under that umbrella, such as depression, self harm, and other things that come with it. So, if that is something that you are unable to listen to or cannot find yourself to bring yourself to listen to, we completely understand. There are a lot of other episodes where we talk about other things, relationships, families, TCKs, teacher life. So we encourage you to go find other things that you would love to hear about, and we encourage you to be redirected in that direction, and cannot wait to share more in our next episodes. As always, thank you for your support, and on to the show. Hello, this is Yehna.
And this is Jessie.
We are excited to be back with another episode. We wrestled through many different questions, but today we wanted to share more of our thoughts on mental health and just a little anecdote of when we were introduced to the world of mental health. So welcome and join us at the table.
All right, mental health. Here we go. We are here to cover mental health, our first exposures to mental health, what we think about therapy and our journey with therapy, what our reaction was to it, and then talking about mental health versus Jesus, which Yana's got a whole sermon to preach on. So let's get started. I mean,
Okay.
this generation and especially this day and age, mental health has become much more of a, I would say, common thing for
Yeah,
everybody. It's not as much of a taboo as it was maybe a decade or 2 decades ago. I feel like people talk about it all the time, but
especially in America.
especially in America. But whether or not each individual thinks about mental health, we actually don't know until we ask that person. And you'll be surprised about how many people are still maybe against it or not really exposed to it,
There's
or
just an
some people.
underlying like shame with it.
Mhm. For
Mm.
sure, still. And then there's people that are definitely open about it and talk about it. So we wanted to share our experience, and we understand that it's not everybody's experience. We're just sharing ours. But Yana, what was your first exposure to mental health? And
Yes,
also preface that we've grown up in another country. So
right.
our exposure and our timing of it might have been very different from everyone else's. What was it like for you, Yana?
I think, not I think. So when I was first exposed to mental health, actually, the idea of mental health did not come till pretty much when I came to college. I knew of the word depression and that it was a heavy topic and something that not a lot of people wanted to touch on, at least within my community. But I knew that it was like a heavy thing and it was like a heartbreaking thing. But to the extent and the intensity of it, or just facts and information surrounding it, no idea. No
Mm.
idea what it entailed, what it did to your body physically, what happens emotionally, like nothing. So when I came to Wheaton, this idea of mental health was not starting, was like a big thing, like going to the counseling office. Like they would always tell me where to reference to go to a counseling office. I'm thinking, what is the counseling office? And just the idea of being able to go to someone to talk about my emotion was just such a weird and foreign concept to me. It was just almost like, why? Why would I do that? Why would I put myself in a place where I'm basically being like, I need help? Well, okay, this first of all, this just like speaks to my character, but like, and where I was in my life, but overall, like exactly. But I just didn't see why I was going to depend on anyone in the first place. So,
Mm.
but that's where it all started. Like I just genuinely didn't know what this concept of, and truly didn't really get to the meat of it till maybe second semester of freshman year, or like the first semester of sophomore year. But just that idea of mental health was so, so foreign to me for so long. It was just like a non-existing concept. How about you, Jessie?
Hmm. I think I relate to that a lot. To be honest, growing up, I wasn't really sad a lot. I was a pretty happy kid growing up. You're like, are you sure? I didn't have a lot of big sad emotions. Maybe it's because I was brushing it, like sweeping it under the rug.
Mm,
But so because of that, whenever I thought about people having to share about their emotions or talk about it with an adult, I thought it was very weak. Oh, you need to rely on another person to understand how you're feeling. I know how I feel. That's kind of my prideful, I don't know,
LOL.
mentality as a 10-year-old. And I'm like, what? What's going on here?
They.
But then once I got to middle school, I witnessed a lot of friends that were cutting.
Mm,
And that was just mind blowing to me that someone would want to inflict physical pain on themselves to feel the relief of whatever they were going through. And that was my first exposure to, oh, like there are other ways that people, like, no wonder why there's drugs, no wonder why there's alcohol. Um,
mm,
and then it led to me being more exposed to the world of depression. And I thought I knew what depression was. And I actually even did a senior comprehension project, like a 40-page essay and a presentation. That's like most of our grade for graduating high school. I did that on depression.
mm,
And but didn't truly understand what it was like until I walked with a friend who went through severe depression, and just seeing her kind of lose herself and her character, and to just see a completely new side to utter hopelessness was
mm.
so life changing for me. So that was my first exposure to mental health. And so, Yana, what has your then journey been with therapy? What started your journey with therapy?
Yes. I think with this episode, I'm not going to dig too deep into it because there is no end, JK. But with therapy, I guess I'm kind of exposing myself in a sense, but the way I was introduced to therapy, it was one of this like camp leader that Wheaton does prior to school starting called Passage. Our leaders would talk about counseling in the counseling office and like referencing us, and they're just stating different resources within Wheaton. And I guess that was when I first heard about this concept of counseling and therapy. But now, when it came to my personal experience and exposure to therapy, truly a humbling experience. But one of the directors of an office actually saw that I was a little bit struggling freshman year and was willing to walk with me to my counseling office. And of course, out of my prideful butt and fear of feeling exposed, I declined.
You're like,
I
nah,
was
I'm
like,
good.
no way. That is my first exposure to it. I think a lot of Asian Americans, Asian, and especially Asian Christian and the community that it comes from, this idea of admitting hope when it comes to emotion is like, first of all, so taboo. Second
Mm-hmm.
of all, just it's like a shame that you can't describe. It's
Yeah.
admitting defeat to a whole different level. And for me, I truly felt guilt and shame when someone referred me to that. I was like, there is no
Mm,
way
mm,
I will admit to needing help. I got this. I
mm.
came to college on my own. I crawled, but I got here. I am not about to admit. I am not about to admit it now. Like, we're not doing this.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I was in so much denial and I just was so frustrated. Anyway, but that was my first reaction and experience to possibly needing therapy. So, yes, there was a lot of emotions going on. Just didn't want to
Mm,
face it. And I'll be honest, it took many years to finally get to a point where I was able to truly face it. Did I go to therapy before then? Yes, but it took a long time to even admit that I cannot do this on my own. But yes, that was my first experience.
Wow, I relate to so much of that, especially when it comes to the shame piece. I
Mm.
mean, I just shared 10-year-old Jessie thinking, wow, that is weak that someone has to admit that they need help
Mm.
and talk through their problems. And here I am in a therapy session talking about my weaknesses and my problems. And like, it's so hard to mentally switch from like, no, this is good for you, and getting over the wow, like you're the fact that you're here and you're having to do this. Like, how shameful is that? Oh, which
Oh,
is, I hate admitting that
I
that's
feel like I was
how
like,
we even thought about it.
I know, I feel like I'm like traveling back. I'm like feeling it in my chest. But dang, it was so real.
Yeah, like I couldn't even get myself to be like, if my friends were like, hey, are you free for next Thursday dinner? I'd be like, no, I have something.
Yeah.
I
Like
couldn't even
I
say
would
I'm going to
literally be like,
therapy.
I'd be like, I have an appointment with a friend.
Not telling you where. Yeah, no, for
So
real.
true. Even to
For
this
real.
day, if I were to be like, outside of Jessie, obviously, just, yeah, therapy session tomorrow. So I'll call you like a 10.
For real though.
But I think it took me, I'll share more about this, but it took me almost 5 years to finally let my mom know that I went to therapy,
Mm,
which
mm,
speaks for itself.
mm. Yeah, so clearly, I mean, we talk about therapy, how we go to therapy all the time in our episodes, and like, we're very open to say, like, oh, we learned about this in therapy, but it's taken us a long time too to get here.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, for me, I remember my first therapy session. I wanted to do therapy because I wanted to try it out as an experience. But Wheaton offered free therapy. And so
Mm.
I'm like, well, might as well get my money's worth. But I remember my first 3 sessions, I could not stop crying because I felt so exposed. And I wasn't even talking about anything deep. I was just like, my name is Jessie, and um, I have a brother and a sister. And I started sobbing my eyes out because I felt so embarrassed and ashamed. That's how my first
Dang.
3 therapy sessions went. I know I'm so embarrassed to say that, but I just, even just talking about myself in front of a person for a dedicated hour, knowing that that person is only going to talk about me, freaked the frick out of me. Like I was so freaked out. And then it's also taken me a full year with my same therapist to fully let down my walls. I was like,
Mm.
wow, I wasted a whole year worth of expensive money just giving you words that I thought you wanted to hear. And I was like, wow, I am in a therapy session and I can't even be real with myself. It's taken a while. All that to say, everyone's on their own journey, and this was
Mm-hmm.
ours. And I guess we wanted to talk about this because, yes, go Yana.
Sorry, I just wanted, which also wanted to add, I think the reason why we also bring up therapy so casually in our previous episodes, jokingly we say it, but there is intentionality behind it because we wanted to side note-ishly advocate that we didn't do this on our own. Like this
So
took a
real.
journey, and for anyone who is doing that or is contemplating it, we want to be like, guys, no shame here. Safe place in this environment. Because not just like, oh my God, self-care, let's go, hashtag get it, we're not doing that. We just wanted to be like, we are broken people with a real story, and we invite you to also join this circle of growing. So anyway, just want to say that.
For sure. No, thanks for sharing that. And how, let's kind of wrap this up. How does this tie in with mental health and Jesus?
Mm-hmm.
Which is like, okay, what are we going to talk about that? But what's your take on this?
Mm-hmm. It's encouraging to see there's a shift in this conversation, but for so long, at least in my experience being in the church, I think this is also speaking to being the eldest missionary kid. that's a whole different thing. But at least my experience when it came to emotional vulnerability was unheard of. And church is not a safe space for me, was the idea I had in my mind. And so for so long, it was truly that mental health versus Jesus. It was like either or like you have to choose one. Like there's no way. You either go to the hospital or you figure it out on your own and the bed, sleep it off, drink a lot of water. It was like that idea. No shame to people who take medicine. I love my ibuprofen, okay? But I got you. Anyway, but it's like it's so unfair for a person to be like, you either fight this on your own or you are in the corner, take a little time out in the shame circle. What the heck? Sorry. If that's any of your experience, I'm so sorry. Sorry, I need to calm down a little bit. Yes, Jessie.
I
Good
was gonna
timing.
say that was me right there. I would stare at myself in the mirror and watch myself cry and be ashamed of my face crying, and that's how I would get over crying. Clearly, I've got issues.
I'm so glad this episode is short because I'm already so triggered and I didn't even get to the meat of it. Anyway, but all that to say, there's probably so many arguments, so many dissertations and conversations about Bible and mental health and what that entails and the philosophy behind it and theology behind it and all blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. But to simply put it, Jesus did not come down to this earth to put us to shame. John 3:16 didn't say God so shamed the world that he gave his one. Like, no.
Great.
It says God so loved, LOVED, capital, cap lock. He came down because he wanted to save us and love us. If you just the classic Bible verses us children are memorizing from if you grew up in the church, it's not like just there for pretty fonts and things to memorize so we can fill up our tiny brains. Psalm 23, verse 3, it says, he restores my soul. He didn't say he smacked you in the head and said, get better. I'm sorry. I need to calm down. I just don't understand why. Like, we feel that we are entitled to shame another person. I'm not talking about the non-believers. I'm sorry. I'm just talking about us believers. Y'all, we're broken people. We suffer. Who are we to be like, you need to get it better? Like, no, you're supposed to stand beside them and be like, yeah, me too. I'm there right there with you. And we are going to do this together. It's just simple as that. Why waste your breath? We don't have that much to live. Like, God's coming soon. Why waste our time shaming one another and then you also being in isolation? Okay, mic drop. We're done.
Yehna is on a roll tonight.
I was really tired before starting this recording, but that really triggered me. I think I just opened a wound, guys. Sorry. Probably shouldn't be speaking out of a wound. Shout out to our previous episode, but it's just my thoughts, my 2 cents. Thank you for listening. We'll continue this conversation in our next episode. But really, thank you for listening. I hope that you guys feel encouraged, even though my tone of voice was very aggressive. As always, thank you for being here. If you have anything to say and add about this, feel free. I will love to have this conversation with you. It truly is something I'm very passionate about, clearly. Anyway, you can find us on Spotify and on YouTube, and all our updates are on Instagram. So check us out there. Until next time, for more about this, we'll see you then.
Bye.
Bye.